Well, the threat's rising almost as fast as the deficit itself. 2 guys in Boston accused of bombing the marathon. 2 guys in Canada accused of trying to blow up a train headed for New York. So 2 huge issues. The government nearly $17 trillion in the collective debt hole, and a new push to spend more to protect us despite that hole. So how do we deal? Former Texas Congressman and presidential candidate Ron Paul on the phone. Congressman, they're already saying we need to spend more to stop this. What do you say?
Oh, keep doing it. Bring it on. So we have to force ourselves into reality. No, it's tragic because we're addicted. It is like a drug addiction, and you can't get off drugs, and the economy can't get off spending. Just look at what they're doing at the airports now, pretending little cuts, and then they emphasize it, and they amplify it by playing politics with it. So they'll never cut spending. The Fed is there to monetize the debt. We're going to continue to do this until there is a true economic crisis. And I don't think what we had in 08, 09 was very much. I think it's going to get much worse because we've never lived in times quite like this when the whole world was inflating their currency and everybody had a paper currency and nobody's living within their means. So I think
it's one thing, Congressman, if you think about it, for the left to say, if in doubt, spend more. But now for the right to say, well, we need to double down on spending and security, sort of like we did during the Bush years, because, well, our lives are at risk. I mean, obviously, you could scare anyone into thinking, well, I guess it's well worth it, just like these privacy invasions I was discussing with your son last night, Senator Rand Paul, are justified because, hey, we might get killed, but so what's the harm if they're poking into our emails and taking heat images of us? I just think you got to draw the line somewhere. Where?
Yeah, I do too, and I think it should be just follow the Constitution, and we shouldn't build up this fear. The one side said there's fear from outside, so we can't ever cut a penny from the military, and we have to expand it when you run into trouble. But the other side said, well, you have to have a safety net for everybody, and they compromise. They always complain so often that we don't have enough compromise in Washington, but quite frankly, I think there's plenty of compromise. And it wasn't so bad when we were a growing country and we were so wealthy. But we're not as wealthy as we used to be. Matter of fact, we're a debtor nation,
Absolutely.
And we're not producing as much. So therefore, the compromise is only to continue the spending, which is the wrong thing to do. They should come together and say, well, maybe we don't need to be the policeman of the world. Maybe we don't have to have food stamps for 48 million people. Maybe our policies are wrong. Maybe Keynesian economics don't work. Maybe the Fed is the culprit. Maybe we ought to even know
I'll tell you, Congressman, you raise a lot of brilliant points, as you always do. Here's my fear. If we're bitching, pardon my French, to the way we are now with these lines at airports and blaming it on what were the tiniest of cuts in the scheme of things, and that's creating the rage it is right now, with even some Republican congressmen and senators say, enough, no mas, maybe we have to delay these layoffs or whatever, furloughs. We will never address a fraction of the issues you're talking about.
Well, that's my working assumption. That's not going to happen. And the next question will be, well, why do you even mess and why do you try to change people's mind? Because I think it's important. I think we will have a crisis, and I've actually encouraged, because I talk to a lot of young people. They know it's coming, and they want to hear something different, and something will have to replace it. And for that reason, there's a lot of people now assuming that there's going to be no easy way out. We're not going to get enough members of Congress that all of a sudden will vote against the military-industrial complex and domestic welfare. No, that is well entrenched. Conservatives are, they're military Keynesians because they say if you don't build the F-35, it hurts jobs. So
having said that, though, Congressman, your son did say, Senator Paul, that if to use this type of high technology to go after bad guys is fine. He doesn't obviously want it used recklessly on individuals, but he seemed to draw the line that to the degree you could track down bad guys, and we have that technology, I think I've got the gist of what he said. Have at it. What do you make of that?
Yeah, when the courts approve, that'll be fine, but it was never meant that we would have this gigantic police force from the federal government. I mean, we had martial law up there, FBI and all these agents coming in and closing things down, going to people's houses, No, technology is fine, but it has to be guarded. And if there's a question, you guard liberty before you say, well, if we catch a bad guy, that is good. You don't give up liberty for 9 people because you might find one person. So I'd be very, very cautious about that. And I would get the federal government is not supposed to be our police force. Yet we have over 100,000 federal officials who carry guns to enforce these laws, and they own Boston. It's criminal that that people tolerated this so much, that we tolerated this martial law and total acceptance that they can come into our houses and we can't even go out of the house. You know, what if we wanted to go to the store and get a oh no, you can't do that. And yet, you know, yes, it was serious. It was a crisis. There were 3 people killed. But, you know, we have 48 murders every single day. There's a lot of murderers out there. Do we close down cities because there's 10 murders over the weekend in Chicago? We don't do that. But here we close down a whole city, not even allowed to go to a baseball game. I mean, I think it's very, very scary when I look at some of those pictures that happen up in Boston.
Ron Paul, you make people think. Thank you very much. Good seeing you, hearing you.
Good to talk to you.
All right.